Boeing's 737 MAX 8 aircraft. Elaine Chao wants her department's internal watchdog group to audit the Federal Aviation Administration's approval process. An Ethiopian Airlines flight crashed this month, killing more than 150 on board. Before that, almost 200 died when a Lion Air flight went down in Indonesia's Java Sea. The United States and a host of other countries, including China, have temporarily grounded all MAX 8s. Just one day before the Lion Air crash, a different crew struggled with the exact same issue on that exact same plane. A pilot quickly diagnosed the problem, though, and averted what could have been another disaster. But what does that near miss mean for the investigation? I posed that question to Mark Weiss, Director of International Operations for Reagan AeroTech.
Remember, they were only in the air about 6 minutes altogether. The handbook that you're referring to is called QRH, a Quick Reference Handbook. When there's an emergency on the aircraft, somebody's always going to be flying the airplane, and somebody is going to be doing the procedures to alleviate the emergency itself, taking whatever procedures are necessary. So what they were trying to do was probably find what we have a runaway stabilizer, we have a situation like this that's happening. What are the procedures that I have to go through to stabilize that aircraft to prevent it from happening? Obviously, they ran out of altitude and time.
The other thing that we've found out is that a different crew was struggling with the same exact issue, Mark, on the flight the day before. The problem was correctly diagnosed by the pilot flying in the jump seat. How significant is this? Does it tell us one thing or another?
Well, it's significant in the fact that somebody was aware of what was happening and what the potential problem was.
And they averted another potential disaster.
Yeah, absolutely. But the other thing to keep in mind is that if that incident was written up in the logbook, why wasn't that airplane grounded and maintenance going over it and troubleshooting and then going back and seeing, was this a problem with any other similar model aircraft? The fact that the pilot was in the jump seat, that's very common. The 737 has a third seat in between the two pilot seats. And, you know, oftentimes people will go back and forth using that seat. The fact that it was a qualified pilot that may have experienced something like this before, or potentially had training on this piece of equipment, or the MCAS as it was called, they were very fortunate. Let's say it that way.
Shortly after the Ethiopian Airlines crash, and we should say investigators are looking at similarities between these two crashes just a few months apart, President Trump went on Twitter with a number of posts, and I'm just going to read a couple of them for you and get your reaction. He says, airplanes are becoming far too complex to fly. Pilots are no longer needed, but rather computer scientists from MIT. And I'm going to shorten this tweet. He goes on to say, all of this for great cost, yet very little gain. I don't know about you, but I don't want Albert Einstein to be my pilot.
Well, thank you, Mr. President, for calling me Albert Einstein. But the reality is, aircraft have become more automated. Every iteration, new model of aircraft become more automated. And the idea is to reduce and relieve the amount of workload in the cockpit. The reality is that you have to be trained on how to manage those new systems. And you don't have to be Albert Einstein. You have to be properly trained and aware of the systems.
With more than 5,000 outstanding orders for these planes, cost over $100 million each, Mark, what does this mean for Boeing?
Well, it not only means something for Boeing, it means something for the FAA as well. So if you break it down into those components, let's take a look. Boeing had a stellar reputation within the industry. But remember that it is a business, and their idea of a business is how do we get good planes out into the marketplace, but we have to keep them safe. Now, it seems like, and again, that's just conjecture at this point, but it certainly appears that it's going in that direction, that they may have rushed this fix or this new aircraft out without really ensuring that the proper training or the proper procedures were aware, the crews were aware of how to deal with something like this.
China was the first major country to ground these jets. The United States was the last. Why?
I think part of it has to do with the fact that the FAA goes on fact. They don't want to it wasn't just a knee-jerk reaction to ground those aircraft. That's one reason. The other reason is it could have been the close ties that Boeing and the FAA have together.
All right.
Sad to say.
All right, we'll leave it there. Mark Weiss, thank you so much.
Thank you.